This Korean probiotic restores the nerve signal your colon uses to contract on its own. It does it in 4 weeks. Put one hand flat on your lower abdomen right now. If there is pressure there, a fullness that was there when you woke up this morning, keep watching. Diane sat at the edge of her bed every morning for 2 years, pressing her palm to the same spot. She was waiting for a reflex that no longer came. Her gastroenterologist had started her on Miralax, then psyllium fiber, then Miralax again at a higher dose. After 8 months, she was taking 2 doses daily. Her body had adjusted so completely that stopping for even 3 days produced severe cramping. She had traded one problem for a dependency she had not signed up for. What her doctor never explained, what he may not have known, was that the reflex itself had stopped receiving its signal. No amount of fiber or outside pressure would restore the operator that had gone silent. I want to pause here because the next part explains why nothing Diane had tried was addressing the actual problem. What Diane's doctor had no way to know, and what Western medicine has no mechanism to teach, is something specific. Korean households have been producing this exact butyrate signal through fermented morning foods for generations. Her mother had called cheonggukjang the thing that keeps the gut honest. Diane had eaten it at breakfast her whole childhood. She had no idea what it was actually doing. Without restoring the bacterial operators that produce butyrate, the laxative path only goes one way. The nerve cells in your colon wall get less and less of the signal they need to fire. You end up needing more, and the reflex never learns to fire on its own again. If you felt the urge this morning, the reflex that came but produced nothing, you are not anticipating a future problem. That is what a missing butyrate signal looks like, expressing itself right now in Diane's body and possibly yours. And here is where it gets important, because once you understand the mechanism, the protocol makes complete sense. I'm Dr. Sarah Kim. When patients ask me why laxatives never actually fix the problem, I explain it with the same analogy. Think of your colon as a municipal water system with pressure valves along the pipes. Each valve has an operator. The operator's job is to open the valve at the right moment and let the flow move through. This is the mechanism that had failed for Diane. Not the pipes, not the volume. The operator was gone. In a healthy gut, a specific group of bacteria acts as those operators. They produce a compound called butyrate. Butyrate is the chemical signal that tells the nerve cells lining your colon wall to contract. When those nerve cells receive it, the muscle around your colon squeezes. The gastrocolic reflex fires. Your body initiates a bowel movement. Stay with me, because this next part is the reason fiber and laxatives cannot solve what Diane had. A fiber supplement adds material to the pipe. A laxative applies pressure from the outside. Neither one restores the operators. Neither one tells your colon's nerve cells to contract on their own. They work around the missing signal, which is why the moment you stop, nothing happens. The signal is still absent. That is exactly where Diane was. 2 doses of Miralax daily, the pipeline full, the operator still gone. C. butyricum IDCC 1301 is the operator. This is the Korean registered bacterial strain that produces butyrate directly inside your colon. When the strain is established, it begins producing the signal. The signal reaches the nerve cells in your colon wall. The nerve cells respond. The contraction happens. The reflex fires on its own, the way it is supposed to. That is the gap laxatives and fiber have never addressed. And it is the gap this specific strain is positioned to fill. Diane made that mistake for the first 10 days, and it was the same instinct that had governed her laxative use for 2 years. Diane's gastroenterologist had access to every major clinical database in the country. He never mentioned C. butyricum, IDCC 1301, not because the trial doesn't exist, but because the trial has no pathway into Western medical guidelines. The strain was registered by Ildong Bioscience in 1959, more than 6 decades ago. A randomized controlled trial at Kyung University Korean Medicine Hospital followed 78 adults with clinically confirmed functional constipation for 4 weeks. The trial showed that the strain gets the colon's reflex firing again. That trial exists. The data exists. And yet, this Korean probiotic has never appeared in a Western gastroenterology guideline. The reason is not that the evidence is insufficient. It is that this is a naturally occurring bacterium, not a patentable pharmaceutical compound. No pharmaceutical company owns the rights to a bacterium registered in 1959. Without the ability to patent it, there is no financial reason to fund the large international trials that Western medical bodies require before recommending anything. It simply has no corporate sponsor to walk it through the door. I found it the same way I find most of what appears on this channel, not through a pharmaceutical visit, by tracing a clinical pattern in my own Korean patients that the Western literature had no framework to explain. What I found when I traced exactly how this process works changed how I think about constipation entirely. That chemical messenger is butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid. Think of it as the key that turns on the ignition. The nerve cells inside your colon wall have built-in docking ports specifically designed to receive butyrate. When butyrate arrives and docks, those nerve cells activate. The muscle around your colon squeezes. The reflex fires. When butyrate is absent, the docking port sits empty. The nerve cells receive no instruction. The muscle does not contract. The reflex does not fire. Fiber gives the colon more material to move. But if the ignition key is missing, adding more cargo doesn't start the engine. Diane's ignition key had been missing for 2 years. Now, here's the part most physicians have never explained, because it shows how this happens gradually, not all at once. The operators do not disappear all at once. They deplete gradually, through 3 things working against them at once. Most adults over 60 are dealing with all 3. The first is age. As your gut bacteria slowly shift over the decades, the bacteria that make butyrate quietly become fewer. The workforce shrinks, not all at once, year by year. The second is chronic laxative use. Laxatives like Miralax and Senna change the gut environment in ways that make it hard for the butyrate-producing bacteria to thrive. The bacteria that are still there end up working in conditions that slowly wear them down. Diane had been maintaining that environment with daily Miralax for 8 months. The third is the Western dietary pattern. The bacteria that make butyrate need a specific kind of fiber to keep their numbers up. A diet low in that fiber slowly starves them out. The result: by the time someone has been constipated for years and dependent on laxatives, the signal-producing bacteria are already largely gone. Adding more laxative does not bring them back. In many cases, it keeps the very conditions that drove them out in the first place. In Diane's case, 8 months of daily Miralax had been deepening the deficit, not clearing it. This next part made the mechanism concrete for me, because the factory analogy is the reason the solution is specific. Think of the strain as the factory that manufactures the ignition key. The receptor, the docking port, is already present in your colon wall. What chronic constipation takes away is the workforce that makes the key. This Korean probiotic is that workforce. When that workforce is gone or too small, no key gets made. The docking port sits empty and the reflex has nothing to fire on. When the strain comes back, the keys get made again. By day 11, Diane noticed the first shift. Her stool softer, more formed, something moving that hadn't moved easily in months. The bacterial operator is a Korean-registered, spore-forming strain developed by Ildong Bioscience in Pyeongtaek, South Korea. Spore-forming means it survives the journey through your stomach's acid environment and arrives in your colon alive and working. That is not true of all probiotic strains. Here's the part that matters most, because this is where the human trial data makes the mechanism real. Once established in the colon, BioVita does one thing specifically relevant here. It produces butyrate. In research conducted at Ildong Bioscience using an animal model of constipation, when the strain was tested on its own, it produced measurably more butyrate. The number, 62 parts per million, compared to 50 parts per million in the constipated animals that received nothing. That difference is the gap between a reflex that fires and one that sits silent. Diane had been on the wrong side of that gap for 2 years. One precision note. In the animal study, the full 3-strain BioVita blend actually produced less of the signal than the constipated animals that received nothing at all, below 5 parts per million versus 50. The butyrate signal specifically belongs to the IDCC 1301 strain within the blend. That is why the specific strain name is the thing to look for on the label. This was not a cell culture study. 78 real adults. Real constipation, confirmed by a physician, not self-reported. Followed for 4 weeks in a randomized trial. Nobody in the trial knew who was getting the real thing and who wasn't. Not the patients, not the researchers. Conducted at Kyung University Korean Medicine Hospital in Seoul. At 4 weeks, researchers confirmed these were real effects, not chance. People in the probiotic group had significantly fewer incomplete bowel movements. Less abdominal pain before going. A measurable shift in stool consistency toward types 3 and 4 on the Bristol stool scale. Softer, more formed stools that pass without strain. And their overall ability to go about their day improved too. 0 serious adverse events recorded. Diane would name every one of those outcomes in the weeks that followed. Fewer incomplete bowel movements, less pain, stools that passed without strain. The people in the trial averaged 52 years old, with ages running up to 65, not exclusively seniors. For viewers over 60, there's additional data. A separate 12-week randomized trial in nursing home residents with a mean age of 77.9 confirmed that this type of probiotic helps older adults have bowel movements more regularly. The protocol is simple, but the timing is specific and the reason matters. So I want to explain it before I give you the steps. Your colon has a natural window when it is most ready to move, the 30 to 60 minutes after your first meal. Breakfast stretches your stomach. Your stomach signals your colon. If the butyrate signal is present at that moment, the nerve cells respond and the reflex fires. Diane had been missing this window entirely, taking her laxative at night when the reflex cycle had already peaked. Taking the probiotic at breakfast puts the strain right there during your colon's most active window. Start by looking for a product with IDCC 1301 specifically named on the label. That name on the label is what the human trial used. The strain is available under the brand BioVita by Ildong Bioscience, which contains it within a 3-strain blend. The butyrate data I mentioned came from when this strain was tested on its own. If you can find a product containing only IDCC 1301 on the label, that is what produced the strongest butyrate numbers in the research. If you cannot find that version, BioVita is the most accessible option. Minimum dose: 1 billion CFU per capsule once daily. Take the capsule with your first meal of the day. Not before breakfast on an empty stomach. With breakfast, so the meal opens your colon's activity window right as the probiotic is making its way through. One timing exception if you are on oral antibiotics. Separate the probiotic from your antibiotic by at least 2 hours. This is not a drug interaction. It is a survival gap. Antibiotics taken simultaneously can kill the live bacterial strains before they reach the colon. 2 hours of separation keeps the bacteria alive. This gap applies only while you are on antibiotics. For viewers who prefer food to capsules, there is a Korean food form alternative. 3.3 grams of Cheonggukjang, traditional Korean fermented soybean paste eaten at breakfast, delivers live bacteria from the same Korean fermented food tradition. Available at Korean grocery stores and Korean online retailers. One important note: Cheonggukjang has not been studied in a clinical trial specifically for constipation. If constipation is your primary concern, use the capsule protocol. Cheonggukjang is the cultural anchor for the morning routine, not a clinical substitute. In the first 1 to 2 weeks, most people notice their stools becoming softer and more formed. That shift toward Bristol stool, types 3 and 4. This is exactly what Diane noticed first, the softening before the frequency changed. This is the first sign the butyrate signal is starting to build. It is not the full result, just the beginning. If you notice no change at 2 weeks, the bacteria are still establishing themselves. You just cannot feel it yet. Not feeling a change at week 2 does not mean the protocol is not working. 4 weeks is the commitment window, not because results only appear then, but because that is when the data confirms the process has had time to work. For Diane, that window was the one she almost did not give herself. Before we go further, nothing in this video is medical advice. I'm sharing peer-reviewed research so you can have an informed conversation with your own physician. If you're on medication or managing a diagnosis, please loop in your doctor before making any changes to your routine. Before the protocol, a few situations where you need to speak with your physician first. Diane did not fall into any of these categories, but someone watching this with you might, and this is the section that changes what they should do first. If you are severely immunocompromised, post-organ transplant, in treatment that has severely lowered your immune system, or with a central line catheter, consult your physician first. Spore-forming probiotics are well tolerated in healthy adults, but if your immune system is significantly compromised, the risk picture is different. If you are pregnant or breastfeeding, we do not yet have enough safety research on this specific strain blend. Consult your physician before starting. If you are experiencing an active gut infection or an IBD flare, Crohn's or colitis, consult a gastroenterologist before introducing live bacteria. Diane had neither. She had chronic constipation, not an active inflammatory condition. If you are on calcium channel blockers, iron supplements, or diuretics, we do not yet have published research on how this strain interacts with those medications in adults over 60. Discuss with your prescribing physician. If you use opioids for chronic pain, this type of probiotic may help with the constipation opioids cause. Discuss with your prescribing physician. If you are currently taking laxatives daily, do not stop abruptly. The cramping risk is real. Work with your physician to reduce gradually as the probiotic protocol takes effect over the first 4 weeks. This was the one item most relevant to Diane, and it is the reason she spoke with her gastroenterologist before reducing her Miralax dose. The primary trial had a mean participant age of 52.5, with a range up to 65. Diane was at the top of that range. The trial did not break out a separate group specifically for adults over 60. Now, the 4 mistakes. These are the specific errors that end this protocol before it can work. The first one is the most common and the most invisible. The first thing that eliminates the benefit before you even start. Buying a product labeled Clostridium butyricum without checking the specific strain name on the label. This is understandable. Most probiotic labels look identical at a glance, but the specific strain name is what actually matters. A product can legally carry the species name while containing a different strain with no human trial data. How much butyrate it produces, how well it survives stomach acid, and how well it takes hold in the colon. All of that varies by strain, not just by species. What that means in practice: you may spend money every month on a product that cannot restore the butyrate signal. The strain with the trial data is simply not present. The fix: look for IDCC 1301 on the label, or look specifically for BioVita by Ildong Bioscience. If neither appears, The product has not been confirmed to be what the Kyung University trial used. Diane verified this on the BioVita label before she started. The second error is one worth spending a moment on, because the instinct behind it makes complete sense. Eating your first meal is what opens your colon's natural activity window. Taking this specific strain at breakfast means it arrives in your colon at the exact moment your colon is already waking up and getting ready. Taking it before breakfast means the timing is off. What happens? The bacteria still arrive, but at the wrong moment after your colon's active window has already passed. The fix: take the capsule with your first meal. Every morning, not before, not after 2 hours. Diane had been taking it on the mornings when she remembered, and not always at breakfast. That misalignment cost her 10 days. The third mistake costs 4 weeks of progress, and it is the easiest one to make. The bacteria need time to take hold. The bacterial operator survives stomach acid and reaches the colon intact, but the population needs to grow large enough to produce a signal the nerve cells can actually respond to. That threshold is not reached in 3 or 4 days. What happens when you stop in week 1? The bacteria never fully take hold. The butyrate signal never gets strong enough to fire the reflex. You decide the protocol does not work, based on a time frame that was too short to tell. The fix: commit to 2 weeks before assessing the early signal. Assess the form of your stools, not the frequency. Form shifts first. Frequency follows. The fourth mistake is the one Diane made herself, and it is the mistake that explains why her first 10 days did not work. Laxatives work on demand. This one does not. This strain works by building a community of bacteria that produce butyrate every single day. If you skip days, the community fluctuates. The butyrate signal becomes inconsistent. The reflex pattern never stabilizes. What happens? You get irregular, unpredictable results and conclude the probiotic is no more reliable than what you were doing before. The fix: take it every day at breakfast, without exception, for the full 4-week window. This is not something you take when things get bad. It is something that needs to be there every single day to work. Consistency is the mechanism. Diane made this exact mistake. For the first 10 days, she took the capsule only on the mornings when her discomfort was acute, the same instinct that had governed her laxative use for 2 years. When she switched to taking it every single morning without exception, the pattern shifted within the following week. Let me tell you what happened to Diane at week 4. Because this is the part that made her call her daughter. Diane stayed on the protocol for 4 weeks. By week 2, she noticed her stools were softer, more formed, easier to pass without effort. That morning cramping she had learned to expect before anything happened. That stopped. By week 4, the morning reflex was returning without a laxative prompting it. She called her daughter to tell her. Her daughter asked where she had learned about it. Diane said her mother had kept jeonggukjang in the kitchen every morning her entire childhood. Her mother had called it the thing that keeps the gut honest. It took 65 years, a gastroenterologist, 2 years of laxatives, and a Korean bacterial strain registered in 1959. Diane finally understood exactly what her mother meant. Next week, I am covering hwangi root, a compound Korean medicine has used for centuries that researchers are now connecting to something most people over 60 are losing silently. Not kidney disease. The gradual reduction in your kidney's ability to clear what they are supposed to clear every night while you sleep. Korean researchers identified the activating mechanism while studying something else entirely. It has been sitting in Korean herbal medicine for generations. You will not want to miss it. If you do not want to miss the hwangi root episode, subscribe right now. That is how you make sure it reaches you. And if someone you know has been managing constipation without understanding the signal behind it, Share this video with them with